Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome into a special edition of Final Whistle. As always, I'm your host, Blaine Spencer. With me, I have a guest. I have Aram Cannuscio. He is part of Basketball Society. He's a writer for them. He's a contributor. He also does NBA draft as well as focuses on college hoops as an analyst. Aram, thanks for taking some time out of your Thursday to come on and chat it up with me.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, Blaine. I'm excited to get into talking about some prospects for the NBA draft as well as college hoops just in general. Kick it a little bit and just talk about whatever's really happening right now in college hoops and
Yeah,
draft.
absolutely. Aram, for my listeners, why don't you just give some background about yourself and then about Basketball Society as a whole for us?
Yeah. So I'll give a little background on how I got started into hoops. In college, Blaine and I both went to Seton Hall together. While I was at Seton Hall, one of the guys I used to hoop with when I was younger, I had contacted him saying, hey, of anything basketball related. And he was a part of EV Hoops. And if you don't know what EV Hoops is, it's a private NBA scouting service that works with teams all across the country to provide insight, analysis, evaluation, just different insights in general. So an example would be when I was in Portland, actually following my time at Seton Hall, East Coast NBA teams are not really going to want to send out people to University of Portland per se. They're going to want to send private scouting services like us, people we already have in Portland, say, hey, can you go check out University of Portland? Let us know if there's anyone interesting. Portland State, same thing. So there are a lot of little things like that. I've gotten experience with the analytics side, looking to advanced metrics when evaluating prospects, as well as getting my first door into scouting in general. When I was at Seton Hall, I got to scout, Seton Hall themselves, Monmouth, Fairleigh Dickinson, a lot of teams in that northeast area, and got to learn from some of the best. The head of analytics at EV Hoops at the time is now working for the Clippers, the head of EV Hoops, and it's no longer called EV Hoops because the name of the Alan Vinokurov, the guy who head up EV Hoops, moved on to the LA Lakers as one of their head scouts. So, it's a path of a lot of, full-time NBA scouts now have worked for that company. And, I was able to gain a really good experience in the basketball world from that. So from there, during that time, I had done a lot of social media for this place called Basketball Society, which is where I work now. And we do a lot of writing, NBA draft, women's hoops, everything you can possibly think of. But our main focus has always been, trying to give light to those who don't always get light shine on them, right? Like that was kind of the whole prospect of Basketball Society in itself. And like I said, until COVID hit, we had done a lot of events, like a March Madness type event where we got a lot of people in the New Jersey area because that's where we're really centered. And, just kind of everything. And you can go follow our Instagram's Basketball Society _ We have, 60 plus thousand followers, just trying to grind and trying to get that better. And you can see a lot of my stuff on their website where I'm doing active NBA draft scouting profiles and all kinds of stuff like that. So that's kind of where we get to now where, I'm just watching G League, NBA draft content, everything, college basketball, everything I can get a hold of, I'm going to watch. So I can continue to evaluate these prospects as we get ready for the NBA draft.
No, absolutely, man. You're doing great work out there. So if you guys haven't already, go check Basketball Society out and look at some of Aram's pieces. He's doing some great work out there. So, Aram, let's transition to the NCAA. Just released their top 16 seeds, and more than anything, it wasn't really much of a surprise. The top 4 seeds: Ohio State, Michigan, Gonzaga, Baylor. And then you have your Oklahomas, your Texas Tech, Missouri, etc. Was there any team that caught your eye that didn't make the list who should have been on the list?
We talked about this before, how it's a pretty good list. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. It's a good list with a lot of teams well deserving of being there. For me, I've seen a lot of Pac-12 basketball. I've seen a lot of teams that have, to be honest with you, really stood out to me. UCLA is a good team. Colorado's a great team. USC, in my mind, is probably the one team I thought might have sneaked in here, and that's going to be the one team I bring up with. Obviously, Evan Mobley, one of the greatest players to come from USC. He's going to be a top 3 pick in my mind, without a doubt, barring anything unforeseen come NBA draft time. And I think USC could actually make some noise in the NCAA tournament. I think they're one of the top teams without a doubt right now. Some good guard play, but really it comes down to the Mobley brothers in the paint, just skilled big men, and they're really dominating their competition on a daily basis. I expect them to win the Pac-12 title, get maybe, let's see if they can sneak into a 2 or maybe even a 1 seed if they can somehow win out, but probably more realistically 2 or 3 seed if they can fully win out the Pac-12. But it's a more and more competitive conference that, has obviously gotten bashed in recent years. But like I said, USC is really, really turning into one of the better teams in the NCAA this year.
Yeah, I actually do like USC a lot. I think for them in the committee's eyes that their non-conference schedule was just so poor. They started out the year with 8 or 9 like gimmies, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that was the huge issue for them. I mentioned this on Tuesday. My team was Florida State. I like the Seminoles a lot. I think they're a real dark horse was just there because Leonard Hamilton he knows how to bring in athletes, and they will run the floor. They will fly above the rim. They'll play defense. They'll block shots. They hustle. They may not be the greatest shooting team, but none of his squads have ever been the best shooting team, but they're willing to go at it for the 40 minutes if there's overtime, etc. And they're playing at 110 miles an hour in comparison to everyone else. They just bring a certain edge that I think a lot of teams that they don't really necessitate or really try to live up to. So Florida State was my squad, and I kicked Missouri out because Missouri's been sliding for me. I haven't been really impressed of late with them. And so who would be your team that you would kick out? Would it be Missouri as well?
Yeah, I was thinking so. Missouri, even in their, what was it, about a week and a half ago, they got a good win over Alabama, but they were up about 30 or 20 something at halftime and slowly skidded away. And since then, they just haven't been the same team. Drew Smith is great. Mark Smith too. That backcourt, Xavier Pinson, like that whole backcourt is fantastic. They can play, and I think they can possibly surprise a team in the NCAA tournament. But as of now, if we're looking just from afar, like a Florida State team, obviously with Gray and Scotty Barnes and those guys, they're playing great basketball right now. And like you said, with Leonard Hamilton, like you can't really bet against them too much. But yeah, USC, in my mind, if I were to just put one team in, USC maybe over Missouri is probably the route to go. But again, I can't hate on the NCAA for any really teams they left out of that list.
Without a doubt, I agree. I think especially with what they did on Saturday, and then Saturday's results kind of hindered what they had put out as soon as the games got underway, because there were teams winning, there were teams losing. And I think that kind of really hindered the overall productivity that people were like, oh, the NCAA got this completely wrong. We'll just look at Missouri, after losing to they lost to Arkansas literally probably just a couple hours after it got released.
Yeah.
And I think it hurt the committee in that way. But I agree. I think other than maybe like you could have a small argument about a couple teams, but it's not really drastic that they got it wrong.
Yeah.
So I think more or less that they were on the right track, and they definitely are going to be. I think the tournament's going to be great. I think it's going to be really interesting to see. How do you think that's going to all play out for you with the hub cities just all in the Indianapolis area?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. With regard to the level of competition and who has a chance at winning the title, this is certainly one of those years where, me personally, when I'm making a bracket, I like to be like, you know what, I think this team can maybe pull it off. They can kind of surprise. And the more and more you watch Gonzaga and Baylor, you're just like, I don't know if anyone can really contest with them, man, if we're being honest. It'll be fun regardless, when it comes down to it in March. Like any team can win at any moment. Any team can get hot. Just when I look at a team like Gonzaga, they're just so complete with a bench that could start on almost any top tier caliber NCAA program. And we're looking at that team. It's hard to see a team that can really beat them, to outshoot them, to outmaneuver them in the post. It's hard to see that. But again, it's the fun of March Madness is all of those little matchups that lead up to it, the 8 versus 9s, the upsets of, because this is a year where, let's say a 14 seed can be a 3 seed. Like that could very well happen. Especially with with everyone being kind of close together in those hub cities, like you just mentioned, it's just going to be a different environment this year. I'm pretty excited. But like I said, if I were to put my money down, I'd be hard pressed not to include Baylor or Gonzaga in that discussion.
Yeah, I think a lot of the suspense between those two teams has really escalated now because I think especially when Gonzaga came out so searing hot, like they were blowing out teams with a vengeance, blowing out Kansas, and then they blew out Iowa. Well, they didn't blow them out, but the game was never really in question. You know what I mean? And then like the Baylor Gonzaga game got postponed, and then Baylor really turned it up a year after the postponement of the postponement or cancellation of that game. I think Baylor has actually closed the gap more than people really have thought.
Yeah,
because I think when it started the year, Gonzaga was here, and then there was everyone else. I think there's now a closer gap between Gonzaga and Baylor than there is from Baylor to just hypothetically Michigan or like Ohio State or Villanova, whoever you consider that third best team.
Yeah. No, I would certainly agree with that. And both teams are coached and defend like they're an NBA caliber team. Like that's how they kind of run themselves. Obviously, Baylor is, slower paced offense than Gonzaga. Gonzaga is grab and go. I mean, like that first game against Kansas that you mentioned, they score over 100 points, same thing, close to it, pretty much every game since. That's what they do. And they have Jalen Suggs to lead them. It's just such a dominant team. And I know we'll probably get into some National Player of the Year talk, and they certainly got a couple guys there that deserving of recognition at the very least. But yeah, I mean Baylor, their defense is just out of this world. I mean Jared Butler and Davion Mitchell are just insanely athletic and defensive-minded guards that can shoot it from deep, take anyone off the dribble, both run some good PNR action. And, you got Mark Vital and so many other guys on that Baylor team that you can just put on pretty much anyone. They switch everything. And that is something that's so appealing, especially, you mentioned how close they are to a team like Gonzaga. And that's Gonzaga's thing. They'll get switches and then they'll attack those switches. But Baylor, with the full capability of the entire team being able to switch on everyone, and to be honest with you, do a pretty good job of guarding even their bigs, guarding guards on switches. It's lethal. It is a lethal combination of a team. And yes, I would love to see that matchup. Hopefully we get that at some point in the NCAA tournament. That'd be just electric.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the big things for Scott Drew's Baylor squad is that he's really pulled like a Jim Boeheim and said, I am committed to this zone. I am committed. Even though they're switching, it's more of a matchup or a 1-3-1. He has committed and pushed away man-to-man defense, really. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the interesting components that Baylor really has, that they are so committed and athletic, and they're willing to play hard defensively, and they're willing to switch. They're willing to take charges. They're willing to force turnovers, deflect passes. They will do whatever it takes. And that commitment to have guarding a zone, because rebounding is always the biggest issue when you're a zone defensive team. Yeah. You could always get hammered on the offensive boards, and they rebound extremely well. All 5 positions collapse. It's not, they don't have people leaking out. They make sure that they're controlling that tempo of the game. And if they're going 5 deep to go get a rebound and then control the pace of the game, they're perfectly content with that. So it's really unique to see a yin and yang of tempos. You have Gonzaga, who's high flying, loves to showcase their offensive ability, and then Baylor, who's more willing to, hey, we'll tough it out for 40 minutes. And if we win by 2 or 3 points, we don't really care. If the game's in the 50s, it doesn't bother us. We don't mind that. Well, Gonzaga's like, all right, let's get this thing in. Let's get this into a racetrack. Let's be first one to 85 or 90 wins. So
pretty much.
It's really interesting to see the comparison of the two squads.
Yeah, 100%.
So for you, what is going to be the biggest you were talking about National Player of the Year talk already. So who's your guy right now? I think for Gonzaga, they have so many pieces that they're going to just take away each other's votes. Yeah. Which I think is going to hinder them. So who would you put right now as your Player of the Year?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I have a couple names in mind. Obviously, everyone right now is thinking Luka Garza, and he probably deserves it given, I mean, the numbers he was putting up in non-conference play are just staggering. Like, it just didn't make sense. And when you actually like break it down, it's like, okay, those non-conference teams, like they're the lower tier ones, let's say the low D1 tier teams, are for the most part playing, 6-7 bigs when they're having to go against 7-foot Luka Garza. And that's just unfair for the most part. But the ability he's had to stretch it out from three, I got the chance to actually interview him last year. I was talking to him, did an article on him, and he's just a good-hearted, down-to-earth kid who just just loves ball, and he just wants to get better and better. And that's one thing about Luka Garza I will commend. And I 100% would vouch for him, number one. If I were to say someone from Gonzaga, given their undefeated record and given the fact that, probably they're going to end undefeated here after, conference play, I would probably give it to Corey Kispert, how well he's played, how well he shot the ball. Drew Timme obviously is right there as well, given, his improvements from last year. But Corey Kispert, I remember he was actually someone I scouted, I believe it was his freshman year in 2017 when I was talking about University of Portland. They obviously being in the same conference as Gonzaga got to face Rui Hachimura, young Corey Kispert, that entire team. And the one thing you saw from Kispert early was, okay, this kid can flat out shoot the ball. Like there's undoubtedly one thing you can say about Corey Kispert. He's going to shoot so well in any given game. And he's held that true this entire season. He's been shooting so well. And the one thing I've seen improving from him is that defensive equity he brings to the game. He is not I can't call him a defensive stalwart by any stretch of the imagination, but Corey Kispert is definitely fundamentally sound on that end. And he's someone you can trust. And for someone like Gonzaga during conference play, during tournament play, they do have some young guys. They do have some veteran play, obviously, as well. But Corey Kispert is one of their leaders without a doubt. So yes, if I were to give it to someone from Gonzaga, it'd be Timme or him. Probably lean towards Kispert. But like you said, that's kind of the issue where it lies, is that they might cancel each other out and be like, all right, if we have to give it to one person, we give it to Garza. Now, the last person I'll just discuss real quick is Ayo Dosunmu from Illinois. And I love
He's my pick. He's my pick at the moment, man. Kid's so special. Good. Kid is special.
Oh, man, he is fantastic. And this is the one thing about Ayo that I absolutely love, is that you go to his stat line and you look at how he played. If he shot 3 for 12, 3 for 15, 15 for 15, obviously, that hasn't happened this year, but no matter what he's shooting, you go and watch the tape of him, he is playing out of his mind. He's playing hard as anyone. He is leading his team. He's communicating with everyone. He is just so great out there. And to be honest with you, that Illinois team, they are underperforming for the most part. And they are a very talented team, and Ayo Dosunmu is still just carrying that team to what was their ranking in it? They're a top 5 team.
They're fifth now. They're fifth.
Yeah, I mean, and there's one reason for that. The one thing I can say about Iowa is they are surrounded by just elite shooters. They have a lot of great shooters on that team. And while Illinois, yes, they do have some talent around him. Like Adam Miller, I'm still waiting for him to take that next step, and I think it might take a year or two. But it really comes down to Ayo. And a lot of what Dosunmu's done on the court has just been eye-popping for the most part. He put up a ridiculous triple-double just about a week ago. And, he's just, even in those bad games, like I said, and that's the mark of a true hooper, and as someone who's extremely good at this game and understands basketball in general and what they need to do to win. And it seems like every single night in and night out, Ayo Dosunmu is performing well enough to get his team at least there at the end of the game.
Yeah, and for me, he's my player of the year at the moment. I love Luka Garza, but again, you answered the question that like the people he was going against, it was a mismatch is an understatement. And for the one thing that I can praise about Luka Garza for sure is that he gets his within the offense. It's not him being a ball dominant, having to just post up and make him go to work. The offense is still being ran, and he's either getting an offensive rebound, he's doing it the little things, and then when he gets his opportunity to score, he takes advantage of it. So he is getting his points and his rebounds through the confines of the offense, which is really impressive, and kudos to him. Yeah. But for me, Dosunmu, he's doing everything on the floor. He's playing point guard. He's playing shooting guard. Sometimes he's playing small forward when they go small. He's doing those little things. He's averaging 21, 6, and 5. I think people really forget that he's averaging 6 boards and 5 assists.
Yeah.
And then he's shooting almost 50% from the field, over 42% from the 3-point line. Mm-hmm. Like, he's doing it all. And I agree. Illinois, I had Pat Lawless on earlier in the year, or back in 2020, and he was saying Illinois is his dark horse to win the whole thing. Yeah. So, and I agree with him. I think it's going to be hard, but just the amount of guard play that they have at their disposal is absolutely ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
So
completely agree with that.
I love Iowa DeSumo. I love Illinois. I think they're going to really surprise some people, but I think the biggest thing is that they're still the third best team in the Big Ten at the moment, right?
Yeah.
You have Michigan. They've only lost once. Ohio State, I think, has exceeded all expectations this year. Yeah. I thought for them, Ohio State was going to be a bubble team, and now they're potentially going to be a 1 seed. What is the overall play of the Big Ten been for you? Because I think they've been the best conference, and it's not even close.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I talked up the Pac-12, and we can break it down. Big 12, you have some people who have stood out. Texas Tech has taken a little tiny dip lately, and so has Texas. But yeah, if we are to break it down, Big Ten, probably the best conference right now. Obviously ACC a down year, I would argue. And then, with the Big Ten, I actually really like Michigan. I think Michigan probably becomes the top team there. And Isaiah Livers has been fantastic. Mm-hmm. Hunter Dickinson has played really well as a freshman. He'll continue to get better. And I think as I break down that Big Ten, I think Illinois definitely is up there. Do I put them a little behind Michigan? Probably yes, in my opinion. But I probably would put them a little above Ohio State. Ohio State is lacking guard play right now. I was one to say, I was really expecting a huge year of Seth Towns. And it's not that he hasn't impressed me totally, but the whole thing about Seth Towns has been that, he's coming off this injury. He hasn't played in a couple years. He's, that transfer from Harvard. He hasn't been able to take that next step that I was expecting from him. But we'll see if that ends up changing over these next couple of weeks as he gets more and more time. But like I said, if I were to claim it right now, Michigan, I think, just has the veteran presence as well as still the talent to take them to the Big Ten. But in general, that Big Ten is going to be fun to watch without a doubt in these upcoming weeks and as we're leading into conference tournament play.
Oh, without a doubt. I want to get – I had this wild take the other day, and I want to get your opinion on it. I thought this year, as we're going to switch to Big 12, I think this is Lon Kruger's best coaching job ever, what he's done with this Oklahoma squad. Am I wrong?
Yeah. No, you're definitely not wrong on that. I think Oklahoma is, let's say, I'm trying to remember exactly who has been out for Oklahoma. I think
Austin Reeves was out for the past couple weeks because of COVID, and they're still beating teams. He just came back for the West Virginia game when he hit the game winner.
Yes, sir. Yeah. I remember that's who it was. Oklahoma against Alabama. I remember watching that game.
Out 3 starters.
3 stars. Yep. And I was watching that game and I'm like, is this team that deep? I thought they had no chance of actually pulling that one out. But
I told all my sports betting people take Alabama, and they threw me a curveball and a half.
Yeah. 100%. Yo, let me turn on my light real quick.
No worries. You're good. But I think more than anything, my goodness.
Yeah.
Lon Kruger, what he's done has been absolutely immaculate of a coaching job, what he's been doing with COVID.
Their guard play off the bench, a lot of those guys, I didn't even really hear of before this year. Obviously me focusing so much on NBA draft talk and so many of that. And I'm just watching Oklahoma. I'm like, if this team was going to be the team they were going to be, I thought it was Brady Manick and Austin Reeves you're going to have to fully rely on. And their depth has just come out of nowhere, and they're competing every single solitary night. And they're definitely a fun team that can that is definitely going to continue to surprise teams in the Big 12. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that's probably Baylor's conference. to claim
without a
for
doubt.
anyone else to touch them. It's going to be tough, but yeah, Oklahoma has certainly surprised this year.
Yeah, for sure. So what are some games that you're looking forward to this week?
I think tonight, let me break down this real quick.
We got Iowa, Wisconsin tonight. And then we got Houston. I think Houston at Wichita is a trap game for the Cougars tonight.
Yeah, Wichita State at home, I believe.
Yeah, at home. Yep.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember exactly the name of their guard on their team. Names in college basketball always figure that out. Let me get his name.
Tyson Etienne for Wichita.
Tyson Etienne. Yep, 100%. I was able to watch him earlier this year, and he is, whether his transition to professional basketball will be successful or not is a different discussion. But at this level, at the collegiate level, Tyson Etienne has been an insanely efficient and creative scorer at this level. And he is someone who continues to carry Wichita State and keeps them in every single game. And I like that you mentioned that. Houston, one thing about Houston is they're a very hard team to beat if they're hitting their shots. But if they're not hitting their shots, they can lose on any given night.
Yeah.
And having someone like Quentin Grimes, he and Giroux, they're not – I would love to say, I've been waiting for Grimes, and he's having a more consistent season this year, but there's still those games where they come out and you're like, oh, man, how is this close of a game? I think it was against UCF earlier this year where I was watching them, and I had no idea. UCF couldn't hit anything, but Houston wasn't getting anything really going at the rim. They were settling for jump shots. They were settling for – nothing simple really came to them too much. And a team like Wichita State, who likes to get out and run, they could have a good time tonight. If Tyson Etienne's hitting his shots, they can certainly do that.
And Houston lost to East Carolina, I think last week. I believe it was either last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
it was East Carolina just got their number and they couldn't make anything.
Yeah. Oh, and then I just remembered, I'm looking at the schedule right now. Colorado versus Oregon tonight. That is actually probably my most –
Really?
It's a late one on the East Coast. But now that
I'm happy. I love the West Coast love.
I love watching the Pac-12. I mean, obviously, if you can get Bill Walton on any kind of broadcast, it's prime content. It's prime content no matter what. And – so one thing about Oregon, Colorado, McKinley Wright IV is insane. He's one of the best guards in the entire country. I think he is maybe a top 5, top 10 for sure point guard coming into the NBA draft. But as well, just at the collegiate level, he's finding all of his teammates, making the game easier, and it's really resonating in his teammates' stats all across the board. He doesn't even have that many great shooters around him. And that's the thing that's so great is that they actually shoot well because of what he creates for them. He's attacking the rim. Lately, I think in their most recent game, he wasn't playing at his best. But if I know anything about these kind of guards, the Cassius Winston types, the McKinley Wright types, where, hey, listen, like they're gonna come at you. They're not gonna have 2 bad games in a row, and that's what I'm expecting from McKinley Wright tonight against Oregon. And then for Oregon, obviously the big player to talk about is Chris Duarte, who is fantastic, finally back healthy, which I'm excited about because he had that nasty ankle injury about a week or 2 ago. So I'm really happy he's healthy. He hit the game winner, I believe, against Arizona. It was just the other week. So I'm really happy that he's back. Looking forward to seeing that game. And I believe, Colorado 16-6 against a 12-4 Oregon team. Like that is definitely the one I remember now that I'm super excited to see tonight. 11 p.m. Eastern time. But it looks like you're good where you are, so that's fine.
Yeah, I'm good. It's only 9 o'clock here. I'll be up ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, you got plenty of time for that. And I don't know if Bill Walton's doing it, but if Bill Walton's on it, man, you got to stay up.
ESPN 2, I would be stunned if it's not Walton tonight.
So, with that being said, I think, like I said, I think USC is probably the top tier team in the Pac-12 right now, but either one of these teams can realistically challenge them for that top seed in that conference, and both have an equal chance, I think, to win tonight because I probably give the edge to Oregon just because of how Colorado kind of played the last game, but both teams are extremely good, and I'm super excited to see them.
Yeah, without a doubt. And the Pac-12, you got 5 or 6 teams that are over 500 at the moment, which is almost unheard of in the
Yeah.
past 5-10 years with them being so down. And
Hmm.
sometimes they were begging to just get a second team into the dance, and they've got a great chance to
Yeah.
get 3, potentially 4 teams in this year, which is
Hmm.
phenomenal for them. Because
Yeah.
you have what USC, you got UCLA's playing solid ball. I mean, they've been hit
Yeah.
by the postponements a couple times already.
Yeah.
Oregon's had a solid year. Colorado 16-6. Arizona 14-7. Stanford's had a little bit of a resurgence
Oh,
this year.
yeah. The problem with Stanford, yeah, obviously Stanford has been great, but losing Zaire Williams for a while, that's certainly hurt that
Yeah,
team.
definitely.
He's back now, and Stanford I expect to compete tough with all of these top tier teams. But Arizona, like you just go continuing on with what you're saying. Even Arizona, like they're a fantastic team. James Akinjo, leading guard for that team with Benedict Mathurin, who's playing out of his mind. Ben Mathurin is exceptional athlete, exceptional player. I mean, there are just so many good players in this Pac-12. You're really not used to saying this. Like, I'm not used to talking about the Pac-12 all this much. But and then with that being said, yeah, I mean, even the bottom tier outside of like Washington and California, like Washington State, Arizona State.
Cal just got Colorado. Cal got Colorado last time out.
That was Cal. That's a surprise Colorado. So, even though I say outside of those two teams, they're still in this.
Exactly. Arizona State's no scrub under Hurley. No. I mean, they're having a little bit of a down year, but they just can't close out games for Arizona State. Same with Washington State. They're over 500. I mean, not in conference play. They've a little bit struggled a little bit, but still, like, the competition has been absolutely outstanding, I think, for the Pac-12.
The thing about the Arizona State, if you had told me prior to this year, hey, Pac-12 is probably going to get 4 or 5 or 6 teams into the tournament, and that didn't include Arizona State, I would have just walked away. I'll be like,
oh, absolutely.
I have no idea. Arizona State's like Marcus Bagley hasn't lived up, I guess, to the hype. I guess at this level, but he's so young, so I can't just there's nothing I can say about this. Same thing with Josh Christopher. He hasn't been the most efficient. And then the whole thing with that team obviously is, Remy Martin missed those couple games, I believe, because of a death in his family, and he had to miss a few ones. But I think, Remy Martin still, he would have been one I'd say coming into this year, like, hey, like I think he's probably 20, 23, 24 point per game scorer. He's insane. He was great last year. His quickness is off the charts. But unfortunately, it just hasn't been the chemistry, I guess, with that team just hasn't been there. So that's been the one thing with Arizona State. I would still bet on them to be a somewhat surprise in the Pac-12 tournament, but it all depends on what matchup they get and if they can match up well. Because for the most part, they can match up well with any team. But like you said, if they can't finish games, it's not going to do them any good.
Yeah, without a doubt. And then before we transition to your top prospects that you got, I want to ask you this question because I know Jalen Johnson, he just opted out with 3 weeks left in the season. I've been a little harsh on him. Because I think, I know him and Duke have not been on the same page from the start. That has been absolutely clear. They've had their issues. Then he got hurt, and then he could have easily have just opted out then, but then he came back, and now he's opting out again.
Yeah.
Is he quitting on Duke? Because I think he's personally just quitting, knowing that they now realize that Duke is not going to be a team that's going to make the tournament unless they go crazy in these last couple weeks.
Yeah, obviously I saw that John Rothstein tweet, and I think everyone went crazy after that.
Everyone was going crazy at Rothstein the other night.
Yeah. And to be honest, like from someone like Rothstein, it seems cynical, let me say. In the sense that, like, hey man, you are getting paid to be a national writer while this man's not getting paid to play basketball, someone you're writing about. So, I don't want to be harsh on anyone here, but I feel very strongly that, we have to let this man make his own decision. And that's what it breaks down to for me, is that, Jalen Johnson is a top 10 prospect. I've seen it many, many times before where something happens, whether it's an injury or something unrelated that leads to them dropping. I mean, like Karis LeVert was a second-round pick only because of injuries. And if there was anything else, he was a early or late first round pick. I forget exactly where he was drafted, but he's an early first round pick if it weren't for injuries. And it's the same thing that could potentially happen. So regardless of it being a COVID year, you know, I'm a strong believer of, hey man, if you don't want to play because of something related to COVID, like, and this hit me when, you know, remember what happened with Keontae Johnson. When that happened, I was like, I don't care. You don't want to play. It's your decision. You're not being paid to do it. Do whatever you want to do. But when it comes down to like what happened with him, and I know it might not have been directly related to COVID, but it could have very well been. And how we would have reacted differently, I don't know. But
I think it was correlated to COVID. He's got the heart. Yeah, he had the heart condition. He's got it.
Okay, so it was the heart condition that came from having it.
Yeah, he gets the myocarditis that you get potentially after COVID.
See, that's even worse now.
So that's why I'm stunned at how many people have still continued to play.
Yeah. So am I. And that's, you know, whether I believe this college basketball season even should have happened the way it has with regard to travel and all that, that's something else that we have to decide. But for Jalen Johnson right now as a top 10 pick, as someone who, you know, he was dealing with health issues. He was dealing with other things. And I understand from the outside perspective, hey, Duke's not playing that well, like Jalen Johnson, you know, why are you not doing this? He's an unpaid. I understand the concept of having a scholarship, but he has to focus on himself. I mean, what would have we said if Jalen Johnson stayed, got hurt or got COVID and got really sick, and then affected his entire draft process? I'm assuming we would have said, you should have sat out, right? Yeah. Like that's pretty much it. I mean, when we look at, you know, college football seniors or juniors, when they want to, you know, they choose not to play in a bowl game. I know some people still say, hey, you shouldn't play, but you got to do what's best for you. And I understand football is a more contact oriented sport, but injuries can happen whenever. And given COVID, it can happen whenever. You can hit a team whenever, especially with Duke, where their coach, Coach K, was someone who adamantly said, hey, maybe we shouldn't finish this season.
Do you think that was looming over Duke the entire year after he already said that? Because then the women ended up ending their season. Do you think that was always in the mindset of the kids that like the university's just going to shut us down anyway? So what's the point of us trying to play?
I'm sure that could have been, you know, especially for, I mean, Duke is comprised of what? Obviously people who just love basketball and really want to make the NBA. That is predominantly what that team is going to be. And I'm not going to discredit anyone who goes to Duke who like, hey, I just want to win championships or whatever. That's great. But a lot of these kids, I'm sure it was in the back of their mind, like, hey, my coach is saying we should probably not even play this season. And now we're losing and now this. And I'm sure. And to top of that all off, Jalen Johnson barely got any playing time in the last game, right?
Yeah, so if we're thinking 6 or 8 minutes, something low like that.
So if we're just thinking logistically about this, okay, so he's getting less and less time with his coach. He is at risk for COVID. He could potentially get hurt. Who knows?
Again, yeah.
You're only going to hurt your draft stock. And that's just how we have to think, right? Like if I have a job and I'm not necessarily a quitter if I want to move to a different job, right? I don't think that makes me a quitter if I'm like maybe not staying for my 2 weeks or putting in my 2 weeks and saying, hey, listen, I want to go here, make some more money. Like that's kind of how I perceive it, is that Jalen Johnson is a young kid just trying to make a buck, trying to make his money once he can move on to the NBA and ensure his future. And if that's his decision, that's all up to him. And, you know, I think if we get to a point in our society where we're looking at in basketball in general, and we're looking at kids who just want to, 18-year-olds trying to make this decision for themselves and to not put their life in harm's way, I got to commend him for that, to be honest with you. So that's kind of how I feel with it.
Yeah, and now that you mentioned that he's going to probably be a top 10 pick or a minimum a lottery draft pick, who do you have? What do your top prospects look like at the moment?
Yeah, so
give me like your top 5 if you can.
Okay, if we're going to do top 5. So I think 1 and 2 for me I don't think they're etched in stone, but they're getting there. Cade Cunningham is certainly, I think, etched in stone. I don't think I'm going to touch that. He's number 1, and it's clear he's number 1. I saw this poll people were talking about before about who would you rather have, Tyler Hero or Cade Cunningham. They were talking about that from last year. And this was from last year. This was before Cade Cunningham played in college. And it was majority was Tyler Hero. And obviously this was during a time where Hero was killing it in the bubble and Cade Cunningham was still a high school prospect who hadn't gotten to college yet. But looking back now, I'm like, I'm telling you right now, any team that can afford to get someone like Cade Cunningham, be blessed. You are a blessed team because this is going to be a run for that lottery because there are some teams that would benefit over the number 2 guy or what have you, but Cade Cunningham, his passing chops, his ability to hit, he's been in the clutch situations, has already performed. Like I said, at his height, the passing chops that we've seen, the ability to handle the ball, we have not really seen since LeBron. Like, we have not seen that.
Really?
Now, I don't want to.
I've heard the comparison of Luka a lot. What do you think on that?
Yeah, I see that. I think Luka, the one thing about Luka is his, I guess, craftiness comes from his de-acceleration, kind of when he's attacking the basket. Cade Cunningham goes a little quicker. He's more of a snap of a finger. He makes quick, decisive moves. And Luka's upbringing was just so much different than Cade, so it's kind of hard to do it. But I like that. I like a bigger guard who has great vision, great passing acumen, who can take people off the dribble, has an array of moves to go to. I think Luka has a little more array of moves right now than Cade Cunningham. But I think Cade Cunningham's defensive presence is actually a lot bigger than someone of Luka Doncic. I think he brings a lot more defense. Now, I'm not saying I'd pick Cade over Luka. Luka has shown it at the top level. And the comparison is not, I'm definitely not discrediting it. I think it's a fine one to say. The only reason I think of like LeBron is just obviously athleticism is step down. We're not touching LeBron. No one's touching LeBron, I don't think, for a long, long time. Yeah. But his rotations he makes defensively, just the instincts he brings to the game, his feel for the game is just next level. So I think if people are trying so hard to find reasons as to not have Cade Cunningham number 1, that's when you know that man's number 1. And that's kind of how I break it down with Cade. And for someone like him, he has shown he doesn't even need to be ball dominant. And that's a big component for me too. When you're looking at guards and they're just willing to make the extra pass, sit on the wing, hit the open catch and shoot jump shot. It doesn't really matter with Cade. He's really exhibited so many characteristics that are akin to a top prospect and the number 1 prospect. So with that being said, move on to Evan Mobley at number 2. So these are throughout a lot of people. There are a couple other guys who I'll mention next that can slip into that number 2 spot. Like I said, I think Cade stays at number 1, but Evan Mobley's prowess as the defender, given his height, it kind of reminds me, obviously, them going to the same college last year, Onyeka Okongwu, kind of reminds me of that, just the defensive prowess he can bring. Mobley's mobility, given his height, is just next level, and it's something I haven't seen in a bit for someone that can possibly play a center position in the NBA. And that is where we're going to. This NBA transition, it's not so much people cite Embiid and Jokic as, hey, these guys who are next level bigs. Are we returning back to the big era? Like, are we going away from the guys? It's not so much that. It's that skilled bigs are the next thing. Skilled bigs. So Embiid being able to post up, Jokic being able to handle, and then Evan Mobley being able to switch onto anyone on defense and just provide that defensive prowess that could really help. And he can grab and go. He can grab that rebound, put it down. His handle's not, he's not going to go into the NBA and handle the ball, take up the ball, and just be insane. But once he gets a training camp with an NBA team, he gets some experience, he's going to be great. He's going to be very good. And that defensive prowess is really going to help him for the future. So as we move on, excuse me, for number 3, I've kind of juggled around with my top 5 for a while. I've watched a lot of G League basketball, so I think I'm going to slot in Jonathan Kaminga there. I think Jonathan Kaminga is my 3rd prospect right there. Now, I would certainly – I love Jalen Suggs, and I'll just mention him now because he'd be 4. It's 3 or 4 between those two. The one thing for Jonathan Kaminga that makes me so excited about his game is the fact that his size, his positional strength, he is a man. He is already ready, and he is 18. He does not turn 19 until, I believe, October. So this man he's literally a man he's already ready to be in the NBA. Now, his shot is something we're going to have to work on. His jump shot, his set shot, it's going to take some time for him to fully adjust to the NBA and fully adjust to the NBA 3-point line, because I've seen some shots that have just gone awry. But I've also seen when he takes a little time, takes 3, 4, or takes a second, takes a breath in and actually aims, like actually just lets it fly and actually thinks it through, he can hit it, and he can hit it at an efficient rate, I think, at some point in his NBA career. We're not there yet. His defensive mechanics are going to need some work, but as an on-ball defender, I'm okay with him, especially given his strength and his length. He can provide good help defense and provide some. I know in the G League, I think it was either their first or second game, he had the game-winning block for the team. So
yeah,
I believe it was the second game. So he has shown the ability defensively. He has. Oh no, it was the first game. But either way, he has shown the ability to play on both ends of the court, insane athleticism, finish at the rim, controlled finishes. He's not chaotic at all when he goes to the rack. And he's just a fantastic ball player who just continues to get better every game. And then, so I mentioned Jalen Suggs, and that's someone, when it comes down to the NBA draft, obviously it's all fit based, right? Like if you're number 3, if you're number 3 and you need a primary ball handler more than you need someone who can, be a spot up shooter, but also secondary initiator on offense, you're going to go with someone like Jalen Suggs. But I'd have Jalen Suggs number 4 right here. And to be honest with you, Jalen Suggs, he's an interesting prospect because for him, I won't really watch too much of him until I watch a couple more conference play, but you don't really care as much about Gonzaga's conference play as you care about their non-conference play. So when I saw Jalen Suggs in his non-conference play, it was insane. And I was making overreactions in my head, like, all right, Jalen Suggs, maybe it's top 2 prospect right now. I mean, maybe it's the best player in this entire class. And he certainly is there, off the dribble, live dribble passing. He can do so much on the court. And he's really just
his court vision's unreal.
Insane ability to pass the rock. And part of that is Gonzaga's great offense. Part of that is having someone like Corey Kispert. Corey Kispert is going to get you assists when you don't even deserve assists. Like, that's just who he is, right? Drew Timme, quick action in the post. There's no throw the ball to Drew Timme. He looks around, holds the ball for 5 seconds, dribble, post hook or something like that. That's not what Drew Timme does. It's quick action. It's grabs the ball, little mini hook, good post move, whatever it is. And like we were talking about before, Gonzaga's just quick offense. That's what they do. So with that, Jalen Suggs is already used to an NBA offense. And that's the appealing thing for him, is that he's got shooters around him. He knows how to run offense efficiently, an NBA type offense. Mark Few has made sure of that. And I'll never forget that one Jalen Suggs game, I believe, it was against West Virginia, where it looked like he went down with an Achilles tear. Like
and the whole world was on notice, and then he comes back and makes it perfect. He just puts them in real numbers. He didn't score, but like he was still passing the ball all over the court.
I tore my Achilles playing hoop about 2 years ago, and when that happens, he did the exact same stuff I did to a T. Down to the T, he did the exact same thing. And I was just like, oh, there's no way he comes back. Worst case scenario, it was a bad Achilles strain and you're out for a couple weeks, maybe done for the season. Like, that's honestly like best case scenario in my head. And he literally goes to the locker room and just, you see him start running and he comes out and it's like he's limping on the floor. I'm just like, what? Like, and that's the whole thing. That's what it comes down to, is like, I guarantee you NBA teams are going to look at that game. That is his game to watch. Like, that is one of the games to watch, because his shot wasn't even falling that much. He didn't play the entire game, but he still willed himself and got the game-winning block that game too. Like, I know we're talking about Kaminga's game-winning block. He had the game-winning block in that one. Or I'll say game-clinching, not game-winning.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that was one of the more insane games to watch from Jalen Suggs, and it just epitomizes who he is. And he's literally a lion out there. Like, he will do anything to win the game. It won't matter. He's an exceptional athlete, exceptional scorer. Off the dribble step backs. He's shown really at all. Even with the awkward release, people could kind of argue it works for him. He makes it look good. And that's what it comes down to. And I know people will cite, hey, Lonzo had a good 3-point percentage in UCLA, but guess what? Lonzo is actually shooting really well this year for the Pelicans. Like, it might take some time to you fully become comfortable with an NBA 3-point line with your shot. But if you're put into a good system, you're put into a system where, they have history of developing good jump shooters, then someone like Jalen Suggs could certainly become one of the best players out of this class. Excuse me. And then lastly, like I have so many people I'd love to put 5 to remark on. I love Sharif Cooper. I love his passing.
Oh my gosh, he's been an absolute superstar since he's been able to come back onto the floor.
Just because of his size, he's not number 5. But let's talk about him real quick, because Sharif Cooper is probably the greatest passer I have ever seen at the collegiate level during my time. Like, it is live dribble passing, offhand alley-oop passes to his teammates. It's just insane to see what he does. His intelligence on the court. He tricks defenses with his eyes. He literally maneuvers the defense to move as he's looking, and he's running an entire offense. He's telling his teammates what to do. Hey, you go that. That's akin to LeBron. That's literally what LeBron does out on the court. And he's just literally directing traffic, directing where everyone has to go. Now, obviously with Sharif Cooper, the negatives, not negatives, just things he has to work on would be, his shot needs a lot of work. His, small frame doesn't give them the full ability to really become a defensive stopper, as well as be able to take someone off the dribble, because the burst is not at an elite level. It's not Ayo Dosunmu type, right? It's not there. But it's good. It's good. And
still lightning in a bottle, though.
Yeah.
When he gets going, he is unstoppable.
Yep. Yeah, it really is. Now, obviously, his negatives, you can see a lot in that Kentucky game. He still played really good defense. And he still passed the ball, like I said, exceptionally well. But that'll just take some time as he gets to the next level. And I hope he gets into a good system. I hope he gets into a system where he can kind of see the game from the bench, come off as a backup one, just kind of lead the bench. Kind of like akin to like what LaMelo did this year for the Hornets. Obviously, his was super quick transition to the league, and he's already a starter now. Maybe like obviously like Tyrese Halliburton's doing the same thing coming off the bench for the Kings. Hopefully he gets to do that for a team, just coming off the bench, handle the ball, maybe back up to like Cole Anthony or something like that. Work those two together. But let me transition to the one I guess I would put at 5. I can talk about these prospects all day, trust me. But
I believe it, man.
Yeah. Like Jaden Springer is someone who's killed it. But I will talk about Jalen Green as my number 5 right now. He's in the G League.
Yeah.
And Jalen Green, I watched his first game. I just wrote an article about this for Basketball Society. And I after watching his first game, you saw that first game, you're like, whoa, this guy's a top 5 prospect? I'm like, no, he's not. And the more you watch a Jalen Green, the more you realize, okay, it's game by game with him. You watch that first game, you're like, nah, he doesn't have
an abnormality.
Yep. And then that second game, you watch him, it's like, oh my gosh, like what? This is the same player? He had a different hairstyle, but this is the same player? Like, yeah, it's literally the same player. And then we get to this 5th game they just played, and I swear, like I saw a whole different Jalen Green, utilizing his athleticism to his benefit when it was a detriment to him in his first game. In his first game, he was using the athleticism out the wazoo and just trying to like jump over people or dunk on people. And, that takes some transition. It's like in high school, Jalen Green could probably jump from inside the free throw line, dunk on any person who got in his way. And it just doesn't work this way, right? He has to improve his functional strength and his off-ball defensive equity, but his on-ball defense has gotten better. He's locking in. He's moving off ball better. He's attacking off the catch, and that's so important for young players. Catch the ball, attack right away. Obviously, you got to watch for that travel because that's being called all the time now, but you got to attack right away. Put that rock down and just go straight at him because help defense is coming, and if you try to size them up and they get their feet set, it's going to be a lot harder to take them off the dribble. You're no longer in high school. You're at the G League level where these are the top-tier collegiate athletes, and that's, I think, one reason I'm actually putting Jalen Green 5 is the fact that I think more and more collegiate high school players are going to be going this route because it's really making these players look good. In my opinion, in my assessment, all 4 of these top G League Ignite prospects, Jalen Green, Jonathan Kaminga, I guess it depends on Jalen Green how you perceive them coming in. But for me, Jalen Green was later top 5, like closer to, or top 8, I should say, like 7 or 8. And now he's, like I said, he's probably 5 or 6. And given how he's played these last couple games, I have him 5 now. And I think Jalen Green, Jonathan Kaminga, like I said, Daisha Nix, and Isaiah Todd have all improved their stock. And I think G League is really churning out these guys and making them look better for NBA prospects. That's not to say the college product isn't good, but, situations like Jalen Johnson, like we talked about, where sometimes the system doesn't really work for you, it does kind of hurt your value somewhat. And that's kind of what's happened with a lot of some of these Duke players recently, right? A Cam Reddish type, right? That's a good example.
Yep.
So I think Jalen Green, like I said, I'd have at number 5 to clean out my top 5. But yeah, I think there's so many good college prospects. There's so many. Moses Moody from Arkansas, Jaden Springer, Keon Johnson. I could go on all day. You know, there are a couple guys that I like that are sleepers that I think can slip into the lottery, like a Kessler Edwards from Pepperdine. I don't know if you've seen much from him, but he's a fantastic player too. There's so much talent in college this year. There's so much talent in the G League. I'm really excited for this NBA draft. But yeah, if I were to knock it down right there, number 5, Jalen Green, number 4, Jalen Suggs, number 3, Kaminga, number 2, Evan Mobley, and then number 1, Cade Cunningham.
That's a great 5 though. That is a great 5 you got, Aram.
Yep.
I got no complaints. I mean, I was probably thinking Cooper as well, as he would probably be the one I would maybe flip in or out, but Jalen Green has drastically improved already in the first week and a half in the bubble. So I want to say thank you to you for taking some time out of your Thursday night. I greatly appreciate it. It was a pleasure to have you on. Why don't you give yourself a quick shout out? Where can we find your content?
Yeah. You can find me on Twitter, AC_hoops. That's where I'll tweet out a bunch of clips for college basketball on any given night, as well as G League during the day. And then obviously go follow us on Instagram at Basketball Society _. That's where you'll find all my stuff. And then basketballsocietyonline.com will just be basketballsociety.com shortly. Watch out for that. But you can see all my articles on there, all the reports I've done, and just keep following along.
Awesome. Well, Aram, thank you again. It was such a pleasure to have you on, my man.
Yeah, thank you, Blaine. It was awesome.
Of course. All right, everybody. That's our interview with Aram from Basketball Society. Be ready. Stay tuned. We got some special episodes on the way. Even starting tomorrow, we are going to have a massive surprise for you guys on Final Whistle. Enjoy your evening.